Hello, everybody. Today I have on a guest who hit the floor running on Twitter last year. She has been awakening for years now and has come to understand the world in a much different way than the mainstream narrative. Through a lot of research, hard work, and breaking free of the Matrix mindset, she has posed very interesting questions about the very nature of our experience here. Between her technical knowledge and yoga, she's been able to decipher truth from fiction with a totally new concept. She's co host to several new podcasts, including Realize Radio. Welcome to the show, Human Vibration.
Wow, what a warm
Welcome to
welcome.
my show.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Thank you so much. And we did get to connect for a few minutes before we started recording, and I thought it was really wonderful. You gave me a really beautiful insight onto what your perspective is. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, yeah, I thank you so much for coming on the show. You know, you have a very large audience. You're getting asked to do podcasts all the time. And I saw that you already
I did.
have
I did
one,
six
and now
this
you're
week.
dropping
In
another.
addition to my
Oh, my
seven,
goodness.
including Realize, I recorded I was guest on six different podcasts this week. It's overwhelming. Not
That's
overwhelming.
amazing.
I am overawed. I'm overawed by it. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, well, you're wonderful. I've heard you on quite a few podcasts myself, and I came across you on Twitter
Hmm.
last year. You made some waves right away, being on Sam Tripoli, tinfoil hat,
Yeah,
and
my first
you
podcast
know, and
appearance was Sam Tripoli. Yeah, the
yeah,
big
that's
boys,
amazing.
the big boys, jump in. Yeah, jump right in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So why don't you tell my audience who may not know you? Why don't you give them a little bit of knowledge about who human vibration is?
Yeah. Okay, so human vibration is an expression of myself. I have always been an extraordinarily curious person, and that side of me has never been celebrated by the people that I've always been like a small group of people, like a very small circle. And none of the people that I've chosen have ever really celebrated this like extraordinary curiosity that I possess, unless it's expressed in a very normal 3D capacity. And I've been really good in 3D life. I've done really well for myself. I did all the normy things. I did really well in school, and I got a scholarship, and I went to college, and I did really well there, and I got a job, and I did really well there, and and then I slowly started moving into I sort of started realizing how like destructive my personal lifestyle was, with like how go go go, constant go go go. Like about 6 years ago, I kind of realized that I really needed to start introducing some mindfulness and slowness into I was racing to the end. I was like I was going so fast. I was like wearing myself out, and I was in my 20s, and
Well, do you
yeah.
think that you were maybe wearing yourself out because you were doing
Ma-
so well at everything? Do
Modern
you think
life
it's
is
designed
designed
that
to,
way?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Modern life is. You mentioned this in our brief chat before. You mentioned the rat race, the human race. That there's a race. We're racing for something. And when I really do think, once I awoke, and I really awoken in 2020, but I think it was about a 6 year path leading up to that. But once I really awoken, I realized that this entire race that I have been on is designed, and you put this beautifully earlier too, we're pointed in the wrong direction. We're running in the wrong direction. We're running very fast, and we're running very purposefully. But early on, we were just spun the wrong way. We were just turned around. And it took me about 30 some odd years 30 some odd years to really to realize, hang on, wait a second, I've been going the wrong way this whole time. Let me turn around. And I finally did. Everywhere I look in this direction feels right. Feels way more right. Feels way more intuitive, and I'm living more in that direction. So as far as like what human vibration is, it's on Twitter at human vibration. I talk about a lot of wild concepts. Whatever you believe, whatever fundamental underpinning you lay claim to about how you perceive reality, there is probably a post I have that counters that in a 180-degree way. From religion to to the currency, to even the air we breathe. What is oxygen? Oxygen is a hallucinogen. Oxygen is actually pure oxygen is an extraordinary hallucinogenic, and we breathe it in all day long, all day, every day. What if oxygen is what's holding this entire reality together, simply because we're breathing it in from the moment we're born to the moment we die?
Wow, that's amazing. I never thought about that, but I
We
do
know we're not
know.
taught. We're never told to thought it think, but that's what I do. Okay, so on human
Yeah.
vibration, I look at everything in a new way. And I've always done that. I've always done that. I've always been contrarian and curious, but until I feel like I really awoken in 2020, I awoken to media fakery. I awoken to fear-based mind control. I awoken to the fact that all of the things that we are told are scary and all the boogeymen were ever projected may not be authentic, may not be real at all. And all the scariest murders and serial killers and boogeymen and this and that and all the things and all the wars and all the, like, I mean, anything that brings you extraordinary anxiety and fear as far as history and our retelling of popular culture and the media, the news, all of the traumatic events and stories, I began to see as a trap, as an energetic trap, as a loosh trap. And loosh is essentially a word for human energy, for this swirling, whirling, energetic force that we all share. We collectively, we all have an energy. Some people are like bad vibe. You're like, oh, that guy's got a bad vibe. And, you know, people that are low vibration, doing low vibration actions, making low vibration decisions, speaking low vibration words. Usually that means lying. If you're lying throughout your day, that's a really low vibration way to live. Doesn't matter how that's being expressed. Doesn't matter how that's being expressed. If you're not living a true, if your words and your mind and your heart and your gut are not aligned, you're out of tune. You're low vibe. You're wrong vibe. But once you're in tune, once you're living in a truth, and your heart and and all these touch points in your body are aligned, I feel like you kind of tune in, and everything you're in, it's a higher vibration state. It's like an elevated experience in this realm.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually experienced something last night in a meditative state that what what I was saying was that I used to be, when I first started awakening, there was sunlight through the forest, through the trees, not like this one, but I have another picture on my Facebook that's the sunlight coming through trees in a forest. And those trees are the lies. And now I'm in a desert and there's nothing holding on to me. There's nothing growing out of me. It's because it's, you know,
Pure,
exactly what you were
deconstructed,
saying. There's no more
deconstructed.
lies
The
in
mirrors have
me.
crumbled.
Yeah.
The illusion, because sand, what is sand? Sand is a deconstructed mirror. You have
Yeah.
taken what we are shown as a mirror, which is essentially a false projection, a reverse of reality. Sand is a very cool metaphor for the deconstructed lie, for seeing the lie for what it is. It's not a mirror.
Yeah.
It's sand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You did say that earlier too, and I've never thought about that.
Time as well. You know, we think of time through an hourglass, sand,
Mhm.
illusion. Time is an illusion. Our
Yeah.
experience of time is very subjective. We talked earlier about subjective truth, and yeah, hmm,
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah. So, you like you said you started awakening in 2020, but it's once you notice that where you are, you're like, "Oh, actually, I'm reflecting back on my life and I actually started waking up when I was losing weight, when I was losing my drug addictions, when I'm quitting smoking cigarettes. That's all part
Mm,
of the awakening process." So, when did
yeah.
that start for you?
You know, I feel I never smoked cigarettes, but I was a sugar addict, and I think that cigarettes act in our brains in a very similar way, in a way that I don't necessarily think that cigarettes are as this is weird to say. I don't even think cigarettes are as harmful. I don't think nicotine is harmful. I don't think cigarettes are as harmful, but the addictive, the random access memory the background thoughts that being a cigarette addict, addicted to anything, takes up in your brain, it robs us of our ability to have these bigger thoughts, because we are on a low level at the back of our brain. We're always thinking about this very specific thing, and that's always going on no matter what. We're always thinking about when are we going to get our next thing, the next thing, the next thing. For me, that was sugar. I quit sugar about 6 years ago. Well, I quit sugar about 6 years ago. Around the same time that I really started my yoga practice and got more meditative. It all started happening at the same time, but it took. I didn't really wake up intellectually, I believe. My personal intellectual awakening. And I'm sorry, my dog's like drinking water in the background if you hear that. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
It's getting louder. My intellectual awakening really began in January of 2020. And that's when I began to see a lot of the news stories. One specific news story for what they were, which was just a purposefully designed a trap, a way to capture our fascination through this blinding light, through these blinding stories. Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot because I was 280 pounds,
Wow.
and then last summer I was almost had a six pack. You know, I had four
You seem very
abs.
in shape. You seem very fit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I built that way, but it was quitting the processed sugar years back,
Right.
like you were saying. It was,
It's in everything. It's
oh yeah,
all day
yeah.
sugar. I realized I was just consuming sugar all day long, and not real sugars either. I eat fruit. I love fruit, and every once in a while I'll have cake. I mean, whatever. But I no longer crave these things. I no longer seek them out throughout my day. I no longer wonder all day, when am I going to get my sweet? When am I going to get? I just eat real food. I feel very satisfied. I do kind of an intermittent fasting sort of way. Like I just eat a
Mhm.
big meal, and then I have a very busy life, and so I just like, how long can this big meal satisfy me? And I usually eat a big one in the morning, and then I let it ride. And then at the evening, usually have nice like a fruit little thing, and then I do have a vice. I love chocolate milk. I love chocolate milk. Oh my gosh. But I don't drink a lot of it. I just have like a little bit of it. And I feel like it's a kind of a nod to my childhood. I'm kind of reclaiming like this little bit of my childhood. And I think child magic and child wisdom is very significant and important. And so me having chocolate milk at night makes me think like I'm like rekindling my connection with my inner child. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's amazing.
moojic.
See, I'm the opposite with my eating, but I eat one big meal at night for
At night.
dinner, and then in the morning I have toast or
Like a
fruit
small.
maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it is the intermittent fasting is, you know, that's what I learned that my body likes.
Yeah. And I think we all kind of have our different register. Whatever works for me. I
Hmm.
think that's, we all are unique. We're all pretty unique. And I think sometimes the ultimate thing is just to listen to what works naturally for your body.
Yeah.
To try things out and test it out. And then I learned that I like a big breakfast. I like a big early morning meal, and then I let that ride throughout the day, and then I have a small dinner if I even
Okay.
and I just let that go. Yeah. But I just like really treat myself for breakfast. And I've always been obsessed with breakfast. I love breakfast. So I think it's really just a way for me to live my dream. Yeah. The most indulgent breakfast I can imagine. Although I don't like sweet stuff, so it's usually just like more savory things. I love a good omelet, or I eat pretty healthy anyway. Even my indulgences are kind of healthy, so I'm kind of boring actually. But
Yeah, me too. Yeah, my favorite treat is usually like a cheese cracker, you know, cheese its or just regular crackers.
avocado, it's like, oh, I'm sick.
Yeah.
But I think once you kind of get in this mindset, I do naturally crave things that are good for me. I do crave.
Yeah.
I no longer crave the no longer have obsessive cravings, and now I'm actually like, ooh, I can't wait to have my vegetarian goat cheese whole wheat pizza or whatever, because like it actually will taste good, and
Yeah.
I'll trick it up a little bit. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
it's like you raise your 0 point, so it goes from being -0 when you're addicted to the sugars to then now you're,
Yeah.
you know, positive, and so it feels weird saying, "Oh, like cauliflower
Yeah.
mozzarella sticks
I can
taste good."
taste things differently. My taste
Yeah.
buds aren't burned off. I can taste
Right.
the inherent sweetness. I drink my coffee black now. I don't drink a lot of coffee anymore, but every once in a while, not even every morning anymore, but every once in a while, I do love like a good, nice cup of coffee. But I drink it black now because I can taste the inherent sweetness. I put a little bit of cream in there, but I used to put like two Splendas and like an artificial sweetener, and now like the idea of tasting Splenda to me is so off-putting, only because I stopped taking I only because not because I'm so much better or so much more evolved or so much smarter now. The only reason, because I used to love it, the only reason the taste is off-putting to me now is because I've stopped eating it, and I know that when I taste it now, because I've developed this new palate, that I will no longer like the overly sweet, because I don't like overly sweet anything. So there's no way I'm gonna like Splenda now. You know, I don't know. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. I went to black coffee for quite a while, but then
Yeah.
I put creamer in it, just a
I put
little bit of
creamer, but
creamer.
that's like, yeah. And now I put some chocolate milk on there too. Oh no, I'm really backsliding.
Hey,
Oh
hey, I've done a little bit of chocolate milk or hot chocolate powder in my coffee, and that's pretty good.
no. Yeah, that sounds like a good recipe. Me too. I've done that before. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not
So
as
you're
strict as
big
I
into
sound, but I don't crave sugar anymore. That's the best part. I don't like. I'm like,
yeah.
ooh, where's my little fix? Where's my little M? I used to carry M&Ms in my purse. Honestly, in my 20s, in my late 20s, I remember I actually would have M&Ms in my purse more often than you think. Yeah. Hmm.
Uh,
Weird.
were you bigger? Did you lose weight
Not
once you
really.
quit, or was it
Not really.
okay?
I've always been small. That's the kind of interesting thing. I've always I come from my mom's very thin, and I've always just been meant to. No matter what I do, I mean, I think I'm way more fit and healthy in general now, but I've always been kind of naturally on the thinner side. Um, hmm. But I would say before, my relationship with exercise was different as well. Like it was much more like punishing, like, oh, because I did this, now I need to do this, and because I did this, I need to do that. When now I'm just like, oh, I feel like going to yoga, and that's going to make me feel really great, so that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, and
So
that's my
it's not a
approach.
chore anymore.
Not a chore. I never have a negative. I never have. I remember I used to feel really like, ugh, I got to go to the gym and drag. The whole idea of dragging yourself to the workout, I
Mhm.
haven't felt that in years. I have not felt that sensation in years. I love going to yoga. I go a couple times a week, maybe at the most 3 or 4 times a week. I don't go all that often. And between that, I walk and get sunshine and walk and listen to audiobooks and podcasts and all sorts of, or just the birds, whatever, you know. But I used to be like, oh, work out every day, work out for an hour, cardio, cardio, cardio. I haven't done quote unquote cardio in years, but yeah, I don't know.
Wow,
Interesting.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I've come to realize that our foods, so, I have this thinking that everything physical is just symbolic of the spiritual nature. And
Yes.
us eating is just, we're just consuming the energy of something. Like, in order to
Yes.
be alive here, you have to kill other things, you have to consume its energy. And even fake processed things like a candy bar, it has its own energy here.
Your willing
And
consent to the process. Yeah.
right, and you're consuming low vibrational things because it's
Yep.
not a conscious thing that your energy's taking in. So then it starts growing itself
Yeah.
because you're putting these artificial consciousnesses in your body and it's not mixing very well.
I had that sensation the other day. Every once in a while, I'm not perfect. I'll go through McDonald's and get like a breakfast little something, and I had the sensation when I was eating it. I took a bite, and this was just after doing it many times. I had the sensation that everything that I was eating was dead. Even the bread was dead. Meal was dead. Wheat was dead. Grain that had been processed in a way. The meat was dead. The egg was dead. The cheese was dead. The bread was dead. The entire bite that I was taking was just dead food. Made me, made me. I swallowed it, but I was like, oh, I kind of should have spit that out, maybe. But I couldn't eat the rest, and I don't know if I'll go back to McDonald's or I don't know, very strange. But I do like to eat. My favorite thing to do is eat whole, fresh food, like the real, like broccoli. There's no ingredients in broccoli. It's just broccoli. cook that up, you know.
Yeah.
Bell pepper, one ingredient, bell pepper, you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Tomatoes, onions.
Tomato ingredients, tomato. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
felt that way with Subway years ago, that it was just lifeless. It was
lifeless.
like the saddest, most depressing thing I've ever eaten, and I was like, I've never
It
eaten it
Subway
again.
does appear, and the experience of Subway food is quite depressing. The sandwiches are
Yeah,
so like, especially the wilted lettuce. Every time that gets me every time. There's something.
yeah.
I think there's something psychological, purposefully about Subway.
I feel like it's a frowny face. Like if they present you a
The
foot
sandwich
long,
is a
it's gonna
frowny face.
frown.
Uh
Yeah,
huh. Oh my gosh,
like
the way they fold the Subway sandwich is a representation of the way the world that you were describing with that horse, that kind of like, you know what I mean, that frowny face, the
oh
world, the
yeah,
way
yeah, yeah. I guess yeah. If you were to stick to one part of the bread, yeah,
you were to look,
pretty
cut it in
awesome.
half, and yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Hey, that actually worked. That's a good representation. I didn't even think about that.
Something about it.
Thinking using an example. So,
Something
and
about
its
it.
crust. How about that? The Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is shaped like a roll.
Sand. Oh, and
Oh, that's
sand.
funny.
Sandwich. We were talking about sand. How important sand, the illusion
Yeah.
of.
Oh, and it has sand on the bottom of a roll.
Yeah, it does have that like crusty.
Oh man.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Man, you're just blowing my mind left and right. And earlier when you said about the oxygen, I know heaven is water, space is all water. There's all water around us. We're in this little
Yes.
bubble of oxygen, and it's,
We're
what
in a
you were
bubble.
saying,
We're
like
in a bubble.
oxygen as a
Absolutely.
hallucin
We're in a bubble.
yeah.
That's what I
And
feel.
oxygen as a hallucinogen that's keeping us alive. That's just,
Tethered. Tethered to the
that's blowing
reality.
my mind.
Or like rendering, because
Yeah, that
oxygen is
resonates
all.
so much.
It's also a flamant. Oxygen is highly flammable, which means it's an energetic property. So when we're taking in oxygen, breathing it in, we're getting some sort of, there's like a burn, there's like a kinesthetic burn, there's a burn off. Like we're taking in this highly, like a gas, you know what I mean? Like gas, you can just light a candle in the gas. And then we do have an inner flame. So there's this whole thing that's happening through oxygen with our inner flame systems, the combustion. And if you starve a flame of oxygen, it dies. Like we know that that kind of conceptually. And like you said, everything we experience in this physical world is some sort of representation, or some sort of representation or manifestation of a spiritual concept. And one of my favorite examples of that is the concept of the eye of the storm. The center, the idea of being centered is always calm, the calmest. The very center of a storm, they tell us. If you can be in the center, no matter what is swirling around you, you can find calm. They tell us that. The center of the storm is always calm. The eye of the storm is always calm. And then I, meaning like if I can center myself. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, the eye of the storm. The storm's always around us, and
The
it's
eye
Mhm.
of the storm, if I can center my eye in my storm of a life, of modern life, which is swirling, whirling labyrinth.
And if anyone knows what a Taurus field is, toroid, what's a
Toroidal.
toroidal
Yes,
field?
absolutely. That's basically how our
Yeah,
energy, it looks like an
that,
apple around us almost, kind of like woo,
yep,
woo, woo. Yeah, yeah. Swirling,
yep,
whirling.
yeah. It's
Hmm.
always spinning. We're in the center of that always. That's what you
Yeah.
just said. Just triggered that vision in my mind's eye right now, and it's, you know, I just see
You have
it.
a
That's what we
very
are.
receptive mind's eye. You have a very receptive third eye.
Well,
Yeah.
I've had all my chakras aligned. I've had I you know what etheric surgery is?
No.
Have you
Mm-mm.
ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so what it is we all have four bodies. We have a physical body, an emotional body, a mental body, and a spiritual body. And they all have their different names. Uh, they might not all have some, but what happens is uh, we have surgery performed on us as we raise our vibration. We unlock these new levels, that make us, we get rid of the ugliness within us so that we're losing the ugliness on the outside to match that. It's the physical nature is just a symbolic representation. So I have etheric surgery happen to me like all the time. I put myself in a meditative state and I go into a trance, and all of a sudden I'm in the spirit world, and I have a lot of interactions with a lot of different things, and I feel that a lot of people have this happen to them, but they just don't feel it the way that I do. I've become very sensitive. I've tuned my chakras uh, to a very high vibrational level to where I am open to feeling and receiving things at a clip that is, it just blows my mind. It's an energy that sits on top of my head, on like my pineal gland and my crown chakra, that is never gone. It's always there. So
So you feel like you have found a way to tune in, to truly tune in, to align yourself in such a way that you are in tune with the conversation, the universal conversation happening just
yeah,
beyond. Yeah, yeah. That's what synchronicities are. I think. I think that
yeah,
when we're in tune with with the world around us, the universe speaks to us in an incredible way. Once we learn to speak the language of the universe gets quite chatty. It wants to communicate. Yeah, and I think that some of us have receiving abilities. Your psychic ability is something that's innately you and very special, and the fact that you've allowed yourself to tune into that through aligning yourself. I mean, you had to go through this very purposefully, a purposeful alignment. Probably some things along the way that you did that you didn't even realize you were doing. I feel like that's a
yeah.
big
Many.
part of the journey. You don't even realize what the. Sometimes you just do things you don't even realize. You're like, whoa,
Hmm.
that was so weird that was part of my journey. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, Very interesting. Just like a video game, we have to do certain steps. We have to check in at certain points. We have to look under certain rocks, behind, climb up certain trees. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel the most important step is what we were talking about at the beginning, is tell the truth and not having any secrets. And uh, we don't understand how much anxiety that creates, a lie creates in your subconscious, and it throws your whole vibrational field off. And because I'm so sensitive to things, I can't lie. My intro, I have a new intro now, and it's someone who's just in there like, I can only tell the truth, is what the guy keeps saying over and over, because that's all I can do. Is I can't lie, even though I don't understand it, and even though some of it's batshit crazy. I just have to present it as honestly as I receive it.
The truth shall set you free. They
Yeah.
tell us that. It's the simplest truth, and there are great truths that exist just right here, and you have one of them. To speak, to knowingly speak an untruth is putting a curse, is putting an extraordinarily low vibration energy into the universe. And the universe, I believe, is a blind judge. It doesn't measure and judge us in the way that we would think. It simply just receives what we give it and gives us more of that, because we are
Mhm.
literally saying, this is the currency that I traffic in.
It it's
I'm a
Facebook.
Yeah, it's yeah.
It's
The
the
universe.
algorithm.
Yep. If
Whatever
you
you
bring it
interact with.
negativity, it's going to be like, this person likes negativity. I'm going to give it more of that.
Right.
Um, and I think that through deceptive ways of living, whether uh, even altruistic deception, let's say, I like to compare my awakening. I recently, I was in a relationship for 7 years, and I got a divorce. Really, awakening allowed me to get a divorce. And I kind of felt like, the analogy that I had was, I kind of feel like a little gay boy in Ohio, where nobody understands me, where nobody gets me, but I know that I can be understood and gotten if I just move to New York City. That's not a one-to-one representation. I'm a 36-year-old woman, straight woman. So I'm not a little gay boy in Ohio, but but that is exactly how I felt in my world. I felt that I was misunderstood and I was never to be understood, but that didn't mean that I was not understandable. It just meant that I was not in the right position or place to really be understood. And that's probably another reason that I created Human Vibration was because I had all these ideas about the way that the world could operate and what I saw as a misoperation within the world. And I was just so entrenched in the 3D life that everybody around me was incapable of going there. And I had to do. It took me about a year to break free, but I'm very glad that I did because I was always meant to. It just took me
Do you think that maybe you didn't understand yourself and that's why you allowed yourself to stay there?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, I have always had a difficulty connecting with people on a true level. I have good friends, but they don't really know me. I actually have good friends that have no idea that I'm human vibration.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
because when I speak with them to check in, they're so scared of COVID. They're so scared of they
So
would
how do
be
you handle
offended.
that?
They would be offended. I counsel. They're actually. I noticed that a lot of these interactions that I have, these are actually quite low vibration, and I've been doing less and less of it as I've ascended. And my new community is quite wonderful and uplifting, and I have a lot more interaction with. I feel like high vibration, curious folks than I do my low vibration, quote
Well,
unquote
how do you
friends.
handle so like I'll say for me, I talk to, my mom
My
some
mom knows I'm human vibration, but she doesn't care.
she's afraid of COVID. So,
Yeah, mine too.
so for her, when I'm trying to talk to her about, she's in this fear-based mindset and I can't convey the message that, everything that is because they feared, they pounded it into you with fear. And I can't, I feel like that's the hardest barrier for me to break through and I'm not doing it in a very good way. So how do you approach, like when someone talks to you about, fear of COVID when,
Let me ask you a
or
quick
something
question about your
else?
mom. Was she part of the generation where they had to hide under their desk for like the
Yeah.
nuclear fallout? Okay, so
Yeah. I've been talking
that's
about that lately.
yeah, so that goes part
Mm.
of this idea of the bifurcated mind. They tell us they tell us something that's incredibly contradictory, and when that happens, we have a splitting in our brain. So they tell us that atomic nuclear weaponry will obliterate everything, everyone we know and love. But they also tell us if we just hide under our desks, they told our parents this, if they just hide under their desks, they'll be okay. And so they would do these practices where these little kiddos, back in the day in their little schoolhouses would just hide under their little wooden desks and put their hands over their head and prepare for a nuclear fallout, which they were also told, in another breath, they were also told that nuclear weaponry was a way to eradicate human life, a planetary human life, all of humanity. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting that they were fed those very two specific truths. One truth being atomic weaponry will eradicate everything. The other truth being if you're under your desk, you'll be fine. Because of that, because they had to hold both of those things in their mind at once, it creates this fracturing. They don't realize that it creates this fracturing, but until someone goes, wait a second, which nobody did, until someone, like now we're going, wait a second, but back then nobody did, but until you go, wait a second, hey, that doesn't make sense, it's actually retraining your brain. It's retraining your brain in an extraordinary way to be susceptible to this type of mind control, this fear-based mind control, and that's what it is. It's fear-based mind control.
Yeah, and
Oh,
especially
so
then you went
my
from that.
mom's guilty. She does it too. Like she was trained in
Yeah.
this fear-based stuff, so that's why she's scared of COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they went from hiding under the desk to MLK to
Yeah.
I mean JFK to the MLK to Malcolm X. It was just assassination
Constant.
after assassination, and
Quite
they
violent.
really broke them. And then the
Yeah.
hippie movement, that's what they gave them,
It was a
as they were
reprieve, but it was
teenagers.
a fabricated reprieve. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and LSD's like is horrible for you.
It'll slice your brain up. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
What do you think about psilocybin? I've never done any psychedelic, but I'm actually kind of curious. It sounds like you've dabbled with your
yeah.
background. Do you have a thought on what mushrooms do to the brain?
Mushrooms connect you to God, and they give you a feeling of love that no human could. It's the
Mm.
connection of with God, and you can be reborn again if you just take mushrooms and close your eyes. And
I've never done any sort of psychedelic. I'm actually kind of a prude. I'm pro marijuana, but I'm still pretty much a prude on all categories. But I have never done mushrooms, and I've always said I'm never gonna do an LSD because I don't want an acid based experience. But I would like to do a psychedelic, but it has to be introduced into my life. I can't seek it out. And I do feel like have leveled up in my awareness and my cognition of this experience and this reality. And just recently, out of absolutely nowhere, like a wizard magician, someone who whips up, like grows their own, or has, the psilocybin connect and does their own little tea potioning. And it's like, maybe it's time that it's like there. But I worry. I have some trepidation about it, so I'm not sure either. But I always said if it falls in my lap, I'd do it. So
well,
I don't know.
so what is the worry over?
I don't know. Well, I guess my worry. I'm kind of unknowledgeable on the difference between psychedelics, and I don't want to fry my brain. I don't want to fry my brain. So,
So why do you
but I
why is
thought
that a thought of
because
yours? Why
I
do
don't know if
you?
mushrooms fry your brain, but I kind of lumped it all together as far as like because I know LSD can be really destructive or acid, and I didn't know what mushrooms do. I had no I'd never done them, and so
No,
I don't.
I was only asking that because the way that I interpret anything for myself nowadays is if it brings me fear, then it's not real. Anything that's going to make me
Mm.
afraid, if I'm going to not do something because I'm afraid, or if it's making me afraid, then that's not a
I
reason to
think
not do something for
maybe
me.
it was just like I know that I know that I am told that the experience that I'm going to receive is one of exaltation. I'm
Mm.
told that. But what I'm aware of within me is I have a pretty good tap. I've got a pretty good tap into source that I found in 2020, and I've never done a psychedelic in my life, and I have some pretty psychedelic out there thoughts. And I'm afraid that if I take something that's destructive in some way, and I've been told that psychedelic can also be destructive, like fry your brain. I think that brings my like I don't want to I don't want to take away from what I already have, and I don't want to risk that
Right.
because I've got a pretty special thing. I think. Yeah.
Right. And everybody, of course, is different. There's not one size fits all. There's not one specific thing that goes good for everybody. It just isn't.
Right. We
So,
are all very unique. We're very unique.
right.
Yeah.
So if, of course, anyone listening, I'm not recommending that just anybody just go do mushrooms and close your eyes. That's not what I'm saying. You got to prepare yourself,
Right.
and there probably is a risk to what you're saying is breaking your foundation. Uh, but also know from experience that uh, it's it's just going to add on to your foundation. Anything that's already there, it would just further cement. It just
I
brings
hope so.
you
Mm-hmm.
it brings you to a place that nothing else can, and it's God, allowing you to experience God's love
That inner
through
divinity,
eating.
inner divine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like being reborn, kind of. You go to this great white beyond, and you experience bliss, and it's
What are your thoughts on internal baptism versus external baptism? Are you familiar with with a concept like that? Like
no,
an
I've never
internal,
heard that.
so external baptism is being dunked essentially in a body of water by an intermediary, like a priest or someone a holy intermediary that does like a water ceremony with you in a metaphysical rebirthing process into Christ or into religion. But there's also this concept. We are water beings. We're told we're like 70 or 80% water. It depends on what you Google. But we're told we're mostly water. And I feel like that there can be this internal sea change, almost like a baptism of self um, based on your perspective. I feel like we can. I mean, I know that I had like a revelatory change in how I saw the world, and that seemed like what the idea of sea change is, which is like a swirling, like a changing of the tide, but also sea as in like SEE, like what you see, like a sea change. What I saw changed, but like the concept of sea change is more like SEA, sea change, a turning of the tide. But that literally means like the waters that swirl within go from one opposing force, and then they switch. Um, there's something really interesting about the you talked about earlier how everything is basically a spiritual representation. So if we're water beings and also light beings, and as above so below, and we have the water above and then the light of the luminaries of the stars, and we're kind of told we're stardust. And I mean, how do we fit in? How do we humans? I'd be really interested to hear how we humans, from your perspective, fit into this metaphysical, spiritual manifestation of what's going on.
So the way that I say it is, I think, when I see certain things, I feel like it's God showing it to me, whether it's meditation or a dream. And when I say God, I just mean the life force of everything. It's not a big man in the sky or anything. It's just the life force. It's the universe speaking to us. And I feel like I get shown things from God's perspective at different times. And I was shown physicality was a gift given to us because we were afraid of the spirit world. So God gave us these physical bodies, and that was to show us like, oh, those physical beings can't do anything to you now. I mean, those spiritual beings can't do anything to you now. You're a physical being. They can't do anything to you. All they can do is trick you into believing that you're less than you are, or that you should worship them, but they can't actually do anything. And what's actually happened is, now that they've come into our world, and they've just tricked us, and we're afraid of what's outside of us now. And it's like that was given to us as a gift. And and we see it as a trap now, because we've done these uh, karmic things that have kept us tied to this place. We've had to clear our karma out, uh, and we choose to suffer. So we reincarnate, we choose our lives, and we choose to suffer because we think that we have to suffer in order to clear our karmic debt. But Jesus shows us that's not true, that you can clear your karmic debt in one lifetime. You don't have to have a lifetime of suffering. You just have to have half of a lifetime of suffering. And then you're born again internally, like you were saying, not externally. Someone can dump wood on your head, that doesn't do anything. It's we change, and our cells change every 7 years. It is how long it takes, but you are a completely new person because your cells have completely rearranged themselves. And you look at the Bible, and you have the 7 years tribulation. It's like that's it's all of that is just showing us that we don't have to be afraid of anything, uh, that we are everything. It's just part of us. And like you were saying with the mushrooms, I feel like sometimes my brain gets. So when you take mushrooms, your brain melds in a new way, that your walls that keep you have walls up in your brain. It's like our brain is this big cotton ball, and someone put a bunch of cubicles around the cotton ball, and everything is filed away, and all these little different cubicles, and you take the mushrooms, and then the cubicles get lifted off, and then everything is just melds together. So your brain, not like it feels like it's melting. You know, people say when they're on LSD, like my brain's melting, because it's the walls all dissolve, and you're able to see and interpret things in all these new different ways. And you know, the only thing for me, so I have this energy on my head, and sometimes I feel the melding of my brain in certain spots. And it's like that's when etheric surgery might be happening. But it's like if I'm having that feeling sober, if I was to take mushrooms, I feel like I could probably transcend the matrix, you know, that I would just whoop, I wouldn't I might not come back. You know, so I stayed away from psychedelics for I haven't done them for a while. But because I don't need well, not that I just don't need it, but it's my brain is already there without it. There's some great tale of a some Buddhist or Hindu guy that he just took a sheet of acid. Someone came to him with like the best acid ever, and he took the whole sheet and just took it. And he's like, "What? That doesn't do nothing to me anymore."
Because
Uh,
he was already there. He
yeah,
was already there.
and
Yeah.
it takes me there sometimes. And so when you said about the fear thing, like mine isn't that I'd break my structure. I think that I would transcend physicality together, and maybe that's death completely. You know, I don't know, but I feel like I would transcend the matrix. That's like the exact phrase that pops into my mind when I think about it. So,
I think we have a misunderstanding of what death is. You know, I think we're kind of
oh yeah,
and so I think we can have, like you said, we do regenerate our full selves every 7 years. That's pretty extraordinary. On a cellular level, there's what is it? What's it takes the longest? Like the liver, I think. Um,
I'm not sure.
there's one. Everything regenerates at a different level. Everything
Okay.
vibrates and operates and sheds and yeah, the regeneration of each cell of our body. Everything's made up of a different time frame. Our hair, skin, and nails, you know, are on a certain timeline, and our teeth are on a certain timeline, and our internal organs are on a certain timeline. Yeah, we have a new self every 7 years, which is so cool. Um, that reminds me of generation theory, where the self divides the seed, the DNA from, let's say, the original Mr. Smith, you know, the original progeny. After 7 generations, Mr. Smith's no longer he's no longer traceable. There's no more Mr. Smith. His biological information has been halved and halved and halved and halved into such a degree that it no longer exists. And I think that's kind of interesting from a genealogical realm, that we also have this kind of completely restarting over, you know, like a complete shed of the original. If the original starts at 1 and that 1 is no longer existing after 7 at number 8, and 8 is kind of is a loop. 8 isn't the affinity symbol, so the idea that 7 is a kind of completion, and then 8, I don't know, it's kind of like the loop back to the start. Kind of weird.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, for sure. So, do you think that when you started human vibration, that was a splitting, like you said, Mr. Smith, he kept splitting, and he was less so. Uh, did you go from who you were to human vibration more, and are you now? Not that you're necessarily identifying with that name more, but with that line of thinking, is that a new person that's in you? And then the physical name of human vibration, is that just the representative of the new you?
That's a great question. And yes, yes to all of that. Human vibration started as a kind of a running away, like a running away from my real life. I felt like I was shouting into the wind, and just screaming into the wind. And that was what human vibration was. And I was just desperate to connect. And I did. And over time, I connected quite significantly, especially when I started getting asked to be on podcasts, and I started doing podcast stuff, and I love podcasts. Hosting is hard. Hosting is a whole beast. So you guys, hats off to y'all. Hats off to all the hosts, because being a guest is so much easier. Like, just show up and lay it down and then leave. You know, when I
Yeah.
do that as a host, I'm like, oh, now I gotta edit this thing, or now I gotta do this thing. Oh, it's a different yeah, there's like more responsibility that goes there. So hats off to all of y'all. But I really do. I truly, truly, truly believe that human vibration, which really began as an expression in January of 2020, through the whole year of 2020 was the unraveling of my normie life. I live in a different home. I sold my house. My relationship is no longer intact. The home that I lived in is no longer the place that I live. The profession that I crafted over my entire adult career, I have found a space within it that I can really, like, I can finally coast. I can cut all the big stuff out and live small and coast on just this little nugget that I've actually been honing forever and ever. And now I get to enjoy it, which is kind of interesting. Like, I didn't realize all these little choices and decisions that I had made were preparing me for this awakening and preparing me to actually be more human vibration. And I'm spending way more time recording. The reason I can record 7 podcasts in 1 week is because my normie job takes up only 15 hours of my week instead of 40. And I can
Wow.
still, but I've worked towards that for my entire adult life to be able to work 15 hours a week and still be compensated in a way. But I'm also living much smaller, and I've made these very big decisions to live small.
So are you still living in the same general area that you
Same general
were?
area, but completely different world. Completely
Yeah,
different
because
world.
I moved 750 miles last July.
Wow, good for
So
you. Good for
yeah, I moved
you.
from Pennsylvania to Georgia with my now girlfriend.
Georgia, I love Tybee Island. I almost went to school in
We live right
Savannah.
there.
Really?
Yeah, I work in Savannah. Yeah, and I'm in Tybee all the time.
I
That's
have
pretty
a
awesome.
I have a photograph. You can't see it; it's in my kitchen, but it's of Tybee Island at sunset. One of
Okay.
my first boyfriend ever. He was in college. He's a famous photographer now, but he took that. He went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Okay.
We
I
met. We
pass
were
that like
dating.
every day.
Yeah, and I almost followed him. But I'm glad I didn't. I stayed, and I stayed me. But he took that picture on Tybee Island, and he got it printed, and it's beautiful. So anyway,
Yeah.
and I used to go
Well,
there
what a
to visit. Yeah, Savannah's
yeah,
beautiful, historically beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and like you were saying, 2020 for me, January 2020, it's really ramped up for me, and in the
Mm-hmm.
same way, I wasn't in a relationship with anybody, but I thought that, I'm a single father at the time, and I had full custody of my daughter, and it's like I was pretty much like, okay, I don't need anybody else. I'm cool with myself. And then God, like, he's like, yeah, go meet your soulmate.
You have to love yourself first. You
Yeah,
have to, yeah. I
complete
mean, that's
yourself.
weird and cliche. You have to be your partner. You have to be your
Mm-hmm.
own. You have to be a good steward and partner to your own emotional truth and to your own physical state. If you're not treating yourself, it doesn't matter how good you are at pretending. If you're not truly treating yourself well, emotionally or physically, um, it's impossible to really connect with another person. It's impossible to connect in a true way. It's
I
gonna always fall
agree with
apart.
that a million percent. Yeah, you have to be true. Because if you're not, then you're living a lie, and then you're in a
Always gonna
lower
catch up to you.
vibrational state.
It's
Yeah,
always gonna catch up to you. Always gonna catch you slipping. Always will.
yeah,
And
exactly.
we're taught to fake it till we make it. You know, that's celebrated. That's celebrated in this life. You know, even as a capable, intelligent woman, which I have, I've been human vibration ever since I was like in the 2nd grade. Like, I can remember being a kindergartner and being like, kind of knowing that adults had no idea what was going on, and I had it figured out a little bit more than them. Kids do. Kids really are incredibly tapped in. Children are,
Yeah,
and we rob it. We rob it from them. We take it from them. But I think that there is something about, you've said it multiple times, that the living true, to being true to yourself, to living in the true steps are the higher vibration. We can ascend we can ascend within the realm, within this video game. If it ultimately, I don't really know where I stand on simulation theory. What I do believe is this world is simulated in a way that what we are told is real is not real. When what we're told is important is not important. And this whole idea of modern life is simulated. It's a simulated experience. Our language is a simulation of language. Our jobs is a simulation of what humans could do to spend their time. Everything's a simulation. Doesn't mean it's zeros and ones, just means that this world's not quite real, not quite true, authentic. I think that as
And that
humans, we should be doing all sorts of different things. We should be doing much more beautiful things. Creation. You talked about creation earlier. Creation, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And, I came into my awakening late 2019 from studying ancient cultures, and they all talk about this. This is an illusion completely. This is not a real world. And you look at Socrates talks about it, Buddha, anybody that from ancient history that was a thinker, they all talk about this is an illusion. Everything you see is fake, and uh, it's not just a certain part of it. Everything is fake. It's like if you have ever seen what's it called, Eddie Murphy when he does the whole family, the Clumps, when he does Meet the Clumps, that's us. We're Eddie Murphy. He's playing the mom and he's by himself, all in a room, pretending everyone else is there. Then he's the dad. Then he's the uncle. Then he's Albert, whoever. He's just pretending. That's what we're doing right now. We're pretending, and everything else is a projection of us. We're living in a fake reality where we have simulated every possibility so that we could figure out which lifeline is the best. And we are each our own timeline. You know, you are the version of me that does what you do, and my girlfriend's the version of me that does what she does. But you're both versions of me, and vice versa. I'm versions of you all. So we're all one being, and we came here to figure out how we should live our life before we're born. And before we even were recording, we were looking at pictures of the Milky Way. So I was telling you, they look like if you are inside of a womb and you look down and you see the inside of a vagina. And we are going to be born out of the Milky Way into a new body, and we're going to have a perfect life because we've lived out every possibility before we were born. While we were in the womb, we lived out all the possibilities, and now, now comes the time where we get born. We become born again, all of us. Yeah.
Is that the concept of the soul contract? How we kind of agree and we sign up for the life that we live. We choose the life we live before we enter into this realm. I've heard that concept. I think
Yeah.
that's quite interesting. I think that's quite fascinating, quite deep.
Yeah, I don't think that we set up the exact details. Like, I don't necessarily say that, when I sign my soul contract, that my dog's going to be named Pinky and Lefty. These mundane little things. But we do say I'm going to have two dogs, and maybe I need to learn a lesson. So there's going to be a tragic accident at some unknown time uh, to one of them because I have to learn how to deal with loss of you know in
So
that way.
every fork in the road, every barrier, every tragic thing that happens to us individually and collectively is really a lesson within this realm, essentially,
Yeah, it's
and
for your benefit.
it's for our benefit. Yeah,
It's
and
just
we
how
talked about
long it
this.
takes
Yeah, we
to.
talked about this earlier too. I think before we started recording, but we talked about how, everything that ever happens, just for the very fact that it did happen, it's perfect. It
Mm.
is, because it is, because it has been. It is perfect. Even the things that you think that went wrong in your life, even the things that we think went wrong in our shared life, our shared collective, our shared understanding of history, our shared understanding of reality, um, it's all perfect and it's all there for a reason. Teach us
Yeah.
lesson. Teach us something. Teach us something about ourselves. Teach us something
Mm.
about this matrix, about this labyrinth, about this journey. Give us some sort of breadcrumb. Breadcrumb. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard something earlier. It was so beautiful, and I never thought about it in this way. And a guy, so he was describing, and it was actually the Lord of the Rings was being described, and I was never a fan, so I didn't know exactly this part. But he says that this God of Lord of the Rings, uh, so he was creating this beautiful symphony, and all of a sudden, one of the chords decided to rebel and didn't go along with the rest of the symphony. And this God that made the symphony, he had the power to snap his fingers and go back and have that not ever happen. But instead, he used it as a bit of flavor to the song so that at the time it seemed like an off note. And then later on, he worked it back in to come back to a completion. It was like there was no story being told when it was perfect. It was just going. But then something had to happen to throw it off for it to then come back to make a beautiful symphony.
It's like yeah, it's a journey in itself. It's almost like a boomerang. The concept of a boomerang. So you have to go very far, and just because it travels far, that's part of it. That's part of the arc. That's part of the arc back. Yeah, to come back, it has to go far. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, so even though the bad things happen, we think that their bad things are happening in the moment and they are unpleasant. It is ultimately for the good, that the song is going to come back and it's going to finish in a beautiful, symphony, orchestra, but right now there had to be, single notes that went off so that they could then come back down. It has to be a mirror effect. If God's painting a beautiful song, a beautiful symphony, well, then, songs usually it's either a pattern, you'll go up and then you'll go up and then you'll go up, or you go up and then down. There's a mirror or a pattern. And we see that all around us with everything. It's everything is either in a
You know,
pattern
you know
or
what I
it's a
think is
mirror.
interesting too? The imperfection. I like that you're talking about that because we're kind of taught that symmetry and is perfection. Symmetry is perfection. Symmetry is perfect. It's because it's symmetrical, it's perfect. But I truly believe that the imperfections of things, whether it's a sour note here in a thing, can actually make things more beautiful and make things more real. In the human face, there's not one true symmetrical human face on the planet. The human face is just simply not designed to be like that. But we are told that if your face is symmetrical, then you're beautiful, but that's not true. That's not true. Actually, that's simply not true. Um, every face is unsymmetrical. Like if you were to bifurcate any human face, one side actually does look quite a bit different than the other side. It's when you get into like unreality, when you get into manipulation, that you find symmetrical human faces, and that means they're not actually symmetrical. So I think it's interesting that we're kind of taught. I do believe that in nature, things run on mathematics, and symmetry in nature is quite awe-inspiring. Kind of makes me wonder, though. Makes me wonder about Mother Nature. She's the ultimate OG, Mother Matrix, MATR, Mater Matrix, Mother Matrix. Mother Nature is like the OG Matrix, So this whole mathematical system, so we're like, oh, because it's symmetrical, it's perfect. I'm like, oh, actually, the imperfections mean it's perfect, and maybe the perfections mean it's fake. I don't know. I don't know.
That's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because uh, heard you on another podcast and you were blowing my mind with all the technical aspects of the CGI. See,
Mm,
there's just for anyone that doesn't know, let me set it up real quick. My understanding of it.
yeah, of course.
So you have uh, there's this everything is fake type movement that's going on, and it seems, to be that you have a good grasp on what that actually means,
Yeah.
and you have this technical knowledge, this background information of knowing that it's possible that the software exists. And I've never actually heard people talk about the software that is doing the CGI and how long
Yeah,
that it's
identity
existed for.
creation software. What we understand as identity manipulation and physicality manipulation, like with our Snapchat filters, you know, when you can put like a puppy dog ears or, you know, a pantomime mask or like a full face of makeup, you can like, you can overlay that and you can move your head and it'll track with it. That type of technology, I believe, has always existed. I believe all technologies have always existed, and things just get rolled out to the public as part of our human experience and just over time. And then we get cover stories for the people that are responsible for these technologies, these emerging techs, when in reality, like they're usually just characters that are given like a facade of creation. And so I believe that the technology that is allowable for identity creation, where you can have like a body and project a different face onto them, or like a whole persona over them, or you can create from scratch a fully CGI person identity. I think that that type of technology has existed for decades, if well, actually for much longer than that, for a lot longer than that. And my first real deep dive into this was on the case of Jon Benet Ramsey, the little pageant queen that was murdered. The story goes, murdered on Christmas night, 1996. And it was an extraordinary story, and it's still just today, 24, almost 25 years later, today, a new news article came out saying they had found the killer, new DNA evidence. This case is unsolvable. This case is unsolvable for a reason. It was designed as such. It was designed to be unsolvable. That's the reason it is unsolved, is because it was designed to be unsolvable. I believe there is no victim at the center of this. I believe that everything is a fabrication. And Jon Benet Ramsey was a fabricated identity. And it was kind of a test of technology. It's kind of a rollout of this fabricated identity. They did a lot of different ways. They had purely CGI images. They had some overlay images where it was like a base body that they projected like a new face onto. A lot of different ways to achieve Jon Benet. And I think that all of it was part of it. And this, I really became awakened to this type of technology when I was researching kind of like 3D rendering, real-time identity creation. One website that kind of trained my brain was called thispersondoesnotexist.com. www.thispersondoesnotexist.com. And basically it's a repository of faces. You go there and you see a face, and then you press refresh and you see a face, and you press refresh and you see a face. And the faces all look different ages, different races, different class, creeds, age, you know, the whole thing. It runs the gamut of every type of face, kids, adults, every origin, whatever. But they're all digital. They're all digital produced. They're not real faces. They're not legitimate. There's not an actual individual human being behind this face that you see. And at first you don't notice. You would never notice. You just see it as a face. You just see it as any old Facebook profile that you would see by searching the internet. I mean, it just seems like a regular old guy or a gal or kid or whatever. And then you, whether you already are aware or you become aware, you realize that it's all digitally generated, and then you kind of start to see it. You start to see some anomalies. You start to see some digital weirdness. You start to see some, like, the ears kind of strange, or like there's something going on in the background, or like there's some weirdness. There's usually some weirdness that you begin to detect. Weirdness that your brain corrected prior. Your brain does a lot of like correcting, which you don't realize as you go through your day. And like the first couple of times you're on that website, your brain's doing this active correcting, and you don't really see all the anomalies. But then once you become hip to it and you refresh, you begin to see. You begin trained. Your brain is essentially trained on the recognition of fake faces. And then, so I had done that exercise, I had visited that website, and I had begun to become in tune with what a fake face looks like. And I'd always been fascinated by Jon Benet Ramsey. And I went back and I looked at that case after not looking at it for a while, and I saw her face, and I was like, oh, wow, this face looks like one of those faces. This face looks digitally generated. And then it was really like kind of a rapid thing. I began to see that the whole case was just this exploration of deception and energy capture and fascination through the media, and all the images were fake and everything was fake and all the details were false, and it was just fascinating but designed as such. And I really explored it in an extraordinary way, and I have it all threaded on my if you go to my Twitter, Human Vibration on Twitter, you'll see it. You'll see this exploration. It's pinned to my profile. The first thing you would see if you went to my profile. It's the first thread, and it starts with this concept of loosh, which loosh is our human energy. And I think that cases like this, cases like Jon Benet, cases like we see today, that are highly energetic, highly magnetic, highly fascinating and traumatic, and they kind of pull our awareness, the awareness of the globe, not just of the American public, not just of you, not just of me, but of the entire world. There are certain stories that have that ability, have that capability, and that fascinates me. And if it's false, that's even more fascinating, because if once we realize that, then we're free. If you can realize that these stories are false, then you're kind of free. You don't have to be sucked into the vortex of these energetic swirling experiences. It's pretty incredible. I feel free. I feel very free now that I've realized that a lot of these stories, a lot of these news stories that captivate the entire world, that they are designed as such, and they are actually based in nothing at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just for anyone who might be hearing this for the first time, you might discount this automatically, saying that that can't be real. Like, no way that someone would just make that up. But you know, if if you go with that concept and just imagine what if, not even thinking that what human vibration is saying, but if you just say, what if this is true, then would this be true? And you continue down that line of thinking, then you'll start to see how it unfolds and how it becomes a very real possibility. And if you what she's saying about the loosh is, it's so true with so many different things, is we get stuck in these matrix traps that exist in our world. We have these ancient mysteries, what is it? The nine great wonders of the world. Like, why do you
Mm-hmm.
think that is? They're unsolvable. It's to keep you trapped there. So you're always thinking mysterious, like even Ancient Aliens. That's now it's on History Channel, and it's so popular. And but they every show is based around the idea of, oh, these mysterious things maybe exist, and it's always a maybe, and it's a mystery. And
Mm-hmm.
they produce them all over the place. And I've seen fakery in ancient structures.
Yes.
There's this guy Dave J who breaks
Yeah,
down.
Dave J. Yeah.
Yeah, he breaks down how you see it, and then you're like, well, who would be faking these structures? And it's, oh, people that build that. Oh, masons. Oh, wait, Freemasons that
Yeah.
are they're constructing our whole reality for us. And now, instead of doing it at physical locations, they've advanced to now using technology and giving us the
Mm.
technology
Yep.
to see it. And everything that we see through our phones nowadays. Everything is
Screens, our
fake.
screens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
a screen, the word screen, what does that mean? But a fence, a method of
yeah,
concealment. A screen is something you put up
put a block.
yes, to block the visible light, to block the view. You screen. Yeah. Hmm. There's
Yeah,
something
even
to
if
that.
you're standing next to somebody and you have them on video chat, it looks different. Even if it's at, on video chat at the same exact angle, it's going to appear different on your screen than it is with your eyes.
Hmm.
It's like your screen is filtering it, and the colors are going to be maybe a little more brilliant, or everything's going to be flipped on you, or there's
Mhm.
going to be some anomaly that is that you can tell, like, one is, oh, this person's in front of me, this is real, and like,
Mhm.
oh, this is not in front of me, this is a screen, this is fake.
Mhm.
And there's a very clear difference. Now, when you're talking about these tech characters, when you say the word characters, are you suggesting that these aren't people at all, or
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that some of our greatest heroes and our greatest villains, and those include some of our tech heroes, like let's say Bill Gates and Elon Musk. I think that there may not be an actual person that was born named Bill Gates and named Elon Musk. I think it is more of a character that has been created that could absolutely be played by a real person. I'm not saying that these are cyborgs or clones or lizard people or anything like that. I think it could be akin to like an actor-based reality where there are actors
Truman
playing the
Show-esque?
role. Yeah, kind of playing the role of these um, objects of fascination, kind of these wonderkins and I mean, uh, Elon Musk. I've listened to him on a few podcasts. I've listened to him on Joe Rogan. He doesn't really seem all that intellectual and all that knowledgeable about rocketry, yet he is the founder of SpaceX. There's something very interesting about that. He doesn't seem to be all there. And one thing that he talks about quite a bit is the production element of space travel. And to me, some people will hear production and go, "Oh, that means building the rockets, producing these highly sophisticated methods of travel, methods of transportation, aeronautics, rocketry." But I hear production in here, video production, sound stage, filming stage, green screen, the production value. Basically, when I hear Elon Musk talking about the production being the hardest part of space travel, that makes me think that what he's saying is making it appear that we've been to space is what's the most tricky element. The producing of,
And
yeah.
that's very interesting because uh, you know having a production, uh, like you're suggesting, uh, would one would think that a lot might have to go into that. But want to remind anyone who's ever seen Hollywood movies, that they have these masks now available that are advertised on Facebook that will stretch and conform, and you can put it on and you can become someone else for a few $100. You can buy a mask and become someone else, and you don't have to be that person in order to have a voice box that might be producing your voice at a certain tone and pitch and frequency. I mean, these are all technologies that exist today that you could have on your person, and you could be pretending. Now, obviously, it would be a very complicated thing, and it would uh, be uh, someone who is intelligent that's doing this. But what we are suggesting here are the very, structures of today's modern society. We're suggesting human vibration is suggesting that they're all fake and that everything has been built on these lies. And if
I'm so
anyone
glad
knows
you
anything
said.
about,
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought the
yeah,
silicone mask because it's not just digital. It's also
yeah,
physical. It's silicone. It's like old Hollywood magic. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah.
right. And so many people know about doubles for the royals or a president, or you have lookalikes, and it's, how do you ever know which one's the real one then? uh, and people change, like we were talking earlier. Everyone changes every 7 years, so a picture of me today versus a picture of me 7 years ago, you wouldn't think I'm the same person. But I am. But then there could be someone who today looks like the version of me from 7 years ago. And if you put them side by side, you'd be like, oh, that person, is there. And it becomes a very confusing type of world that we live in when we're living with these pictures as representatives of who we are on these screens, these still photos that live in perpetuity. And, then we become those photos until we then change it.
That's so interesting you say that because our driver's licenses, we have to get a new photograph, I believe, every 7 years.
Well,
And
it depends on the state.
does it? I think you can renew
Yeah.
it. Certain, but there's a certain they won't let you renew. You have to like they need you to rephotograph yourself. You have to update. You have to
They
like
need a
actually
new
look at
photo
a
by
new
like,
photo.
yeah, yeah, because I think Pennsylvania was 4 years, but Georgia here is 8 years. I
Oh,
think New
between
York's like 10
photos.
years. So it does, yeah.
Wow.
So
I
it
see what you're
does,
saying. Yeah. Mm.
yeah.
Well, they are
But
saying, there's something to that too. You physically, the physicality is yeah. They're telling you, yeah, because we do. I mean, it's obvious that we change as human beings, but it's not just our physical appearance. It's our entire being. It's our entire physical makeup. It's our physicality and our essence. Every bit of our essence has an overturn, has a renewal.
right, right. And so when we see these characters, we don't, for me, I'll say I don't know, I can't verify anything outside of my experience. If I'm not there, if I'm not experiencing it, even if I am there, but I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing, you're experiencing what you're experiencing, I can't verify your experience. I can only verify my experience. So I have come to question, uh, you know, everything. And when I go down this line thinking, like, is everyone, you know, not out to get me, but is there some kind of production that's keeping me in a certain place, keeping us all in a certain place and space mentally? It's like, yes, I see that. It's very, very true. It's happening. So when I see an Elon Musk, uh, even, okay, take Elon Musk as a real person for a moment. If Elon Musk is real, you know, why need him? Maybe because, everyone saw through the bullshit of Bill Gates and now you need a cool tech billionaire that's going to implant you with a chip. So you
Bill Gates
need
is
these
not cool.
characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you
Right.
need these characters, and
Mm.
they made Bill Gates the bad guy, and now he's getting the divorce,
Hmm.
and that whole thing is just. I looked into that for like 2 minutes, and I'm just like, there's so much oddities
Yeah,
about
so
his
odd.
girlfriend and his girlfriend's
Yeah, they're
husband and
publicizing that,
his
and it's so
wife.
strange. Yeah, she
His wife looks
looks
like the
Kevin Kline.
actor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
that
lot baked into that, and
and
Gates just,
Kevin Kline's brother is a private investigator that for disappearances and deaths.
isn't that interesting? Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? There's so many little curvatures in and out, so many little interweavings within that particular thing. And they even have so Kevin Kline's married to Phoebe Cates,
Mm-hmm.
and the Gates have a daughter named Phoebe Gates.
And yeah, it's Phoebe Bell Cates and Phoebe Adele
Isn't
Gates.
that so interesting? Isn't that so interesting?
So, do you think that it's a human weaving these tangled webs? Do you think it's a group of humans doing this?
I think it's a small faction, a very small faction, kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, how we're shown how the entire projection of power is nothing more than a small man behind a curtain, operating a few series of levers and stuff, almost like a puppeteer. I think there's like a small group of puppeteers, and they control the projection. They control the projection. They control everything that we understand, really everything that makes it to our mainstream, really everything that we're told is important, music, movies, media, it's just really everything. The way we consume, everything we take in, whether it's our media or our food too. Our food pyramid's not really built to like be the most nutritious thing. It's just a kind of a brainwashing, I think it's like you need 17 servings of bread every day or something ridiculous like that. But every all the systems that we're taught and told, all of it is designed to bifurcate our mind. We talked about that earlier. How we're given these things that are just simply not true, and we're given these things that are simply not good for us, and we're told that they are true and that they are good for us, and that's how we should live our lives. And I think that there's something really powerful that happens when we agree with that and we go along with that, powerful negatively. And there's also something very powerful that happens when we decide to wake up and then we decide to see it for what it is, which is a deception. And then we're free, and then we're free in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you do think it's it's a human consciousness, whether it's how big the group is doesn't.
I don't know what they is. I don't know if it's a human or an AI. We talked about earlier. I think that we as humans are the most advanced AI, so I don't necessarily think that there's a greater AI above us. So yeah, I would have to think it was a small human faction. Um, there's a wedding going on behind me, so if you guys hear some subtle music in the background, some subtle jamming music, is because there's a wedding happening nearby.
It'll be good ambiance for
Yeah, we got
the
ambiance as long
episode.
as they don't censor anything. Let's use copyright, please. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to talk over it as best I can, but I think that I'm not scared of computers. I'm not scared of AI. I'm not scared of it in a way that I think that AI controls us. I do believe it would have to be an intellectual equal.
So I
I,
think
what do you
I'm
think?
sorry. I
No,
think
go
that
ahead.
it's actually the matrix itself that we live in, the simulations controlling everything. You know, gematria. I have a hard time following gematria because it's so complicated, and and it works after the fact. Once you know what it is and know what to look for, like yeah, it matches up. But outside of the one guy who can predict Super Bowls and NBA championships, nobody really knows how to use the numerology as a normie. And even uh, those things that are happening, maybe, just maybe, it's the simulation talking to us the entire time. That it's not humans. That it's not you know the NFL and Roger Goodell setting up that Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks win way ahead of time, and they're telling you with the draft just because of the Dallas Cowboys drafted this guy at number 5, whatever that may be, that conspiratorial minds boil it down to, because conspiratorial minds are thinking that's a human doing it, and then it would take so many different levels of need to know basis.
Yes, you hit the nail on the
So
head. I think that's a very small need. I think there's a very small people that are aware of the deception. I don't think there's a lot of people in on it. I think that there's a lot of people just doing their job, just unwittingly
yeah.
a part of the deception, thinking that they're operating. I was thinking of the idea of Alcatraz, and I wonder if Alcatraz actually ever had any prisoners. I know that there's a story of the guards at Alcatraz and the ones that paroled the exterior, and they weren't actually allowed to see inside Alcatraz. They were just stationed outside, and that was their purview, and I wonder if they were guarding nothing. If nobody, if all the operations that seem to be bringing in people in and out, because I like to think of like our heroes and villains, I like to think of them as maybe not being real, and so all the people that were in Alcatraz, maybe they actually weren't even real, and Alcatraz was like set off on a rocky cliff so that nobody could ever see that nobody was there, and the guards that surrounded it were guarding nothing unwittingly, but they were doing their job, and they had no idea nobody was inside. They just thought they were doing a very important job on the outside. So it's kind of, I think that when deceptions, I think that very successful deceptions originate with a small few, maybe even a single, maybe even a one, maybe even I've heard a parable that the only way for two people to keep a secret if the other person's dead, and so maybe it's like an extraordinarily singular outfit that is operating all of this, like really like the man behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz, just the one guy.
I think it could be just a recurring thing where it's you just wind them up and then just let them go because you
Wow.
already set it up way long ago for a
Scripted reality.
chain of events would occur. It's like,
Yeah.
because if you're operating out of, excuse me, if you're operating out of the place that you think humanity is going to do what they think is best at any given time, what's best for, to, it, they're not thinking that they're evil, basically. That people typically think that they're doing the right thing and they're doing things in the name of good. So when you fill their mind with a bunch of social justice warrior nonsense, they think they're doing good by burning down businesses. And you didn't have to you pay anybody. You didn't have to do any conspiratorial thing. You just they've been trained to and conditioned that way because of what you did, what the original person did way back when, that set this whole thing into motion.
Yeah, these it's domino effect. It's the butterfly effect, the ripple across the pond, and the idea of a scripted reality. We think of script as like theater, a script being words on a page that an actor recites. But when I think of a scripted reality, I think of all of these. We talked about gematria. I think all of these numbers and symbols that represent themselves throughout times, almost like a fractaling reality. They always represent themselves in these stories. I think scripted in that sense is like a computer script, like an automatic line of computer code. An automatically executing line of computer code is a script. And I think that that is essentially our scripted reality. And that is why the colors are embedded into many stories automatically. The numbers are embedded into many stories. The date deltas are like 666 days or years or whatever, and it's just or 333 or
See, that's why I don't think that it could be a person, because so I was listening to somebody talk about the gematria, and he was saying, uh, Kamala Harris, it was 56 days before her birthday, this happened, then 56 days after her birthday, this happened, and she turned 56, and all these 56 numbers, and it's like, no human could pull that off, because they would have had to know when she was born that that would all take place. There's no way. That's why I think that none of the gematria stuff ever has resonated with me. And I'm glad you.
so it's kind of I've also never jived with the number. I just don't. I see 33, and I know for me that's just more of a flag that if they're embedding 33s in it, it's probably a false story. Like that's my flag.
Yeah.
I'm not putting the import. I'm not weighing it from a gematria standpoint, and I really don't even understand it. I don't know how to do it myself.
Right.
But I do know if I see 33 in a headline, come on, it's probably a
Right.
fabricated story. That's about
And I
that's about as
know.
far as I go.
Yeah, and I know it when I see weird numbers like you're saying. If something's like, the what was that bill, HR 666, whatever nonsense it is. I know that that's just a nonsensical thing to steal our illusion. But I'm glad you brought up the colors, because I feel like the colors are uh, also a big part of what this everything is fake type of narrative, or not narrative, just thinking has led you down this path of noticing colors. Could you explain
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So I started noticing the color hot pink specifically in like June or July. I really started noticing it in all these Lucy events, like the riots. I was noticing like the pink pizza box man guy, this guy that was like carrying around a pizza box,
I
with a
remember
hot pink
that.
shirt, and I just started noticing hot pink. And then I looked back through history, and I remember Jackie's hot pink her suit during the assassination, and Jon Benet Ramsey's was a hot pink everywhere with her pageant dress and her initial photograph with her in her shirt. And when I first wrote my thread on Jon Benet Ramsey potentially not being an authentic, a simulated victim, essentially, I didn't know anything about the colors. I hadn't really made any connections with the colors. I didn't see it at the time, but when I looked back, her whole case is hot pink and purple. Okay, so the color purple, which pink is a shade of purple. The color purple is really interesting because it actually doesn't have its own wavelength on the visible light spectrum. It's not a true color. It's not in the Roy G. Biv of the rainbow. It's not red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Violet is not purple. Violet is a shade of deep blue, deepest blue, like the color of the ocean. Violet is actually the color of the ocean. They tell us roses are red, violets are Blue, not purple. Violets are blue. We do not experience purple, what we know, what we perceive as purple. We don't get that until the polar opposites of the visible light spectrum, red on one side and violet being deep blue on the other, when that 2D visible light spectrum wraps around itself in 3D space, when we actually have a bending of the light into light is truth, and to bend the truth is kind of tell light. So we have a bending of the visible light spectrum, and the polar opposites of red and violet, when they mix, when they try to conjoin, just like when you hold magnets, polar opposite magnets together, or try to put them together, you feel this like extreme energetic field in the middle, and there's like this energy field that's created. So when you put the polar opposites of red and violet, deep blue, red and blue on the other side, in the middle is this energetic field called purples, a whole range of purples ranging from reddish purple on the one end to very bluish purple on the other end. And in the center is hot pink. At the very center of this energetic property, this energetic field, this experience that occurs when you wrap the rainbow, this property is called the line of purples, and at the center is magenta, hot pink. And it is the most energetic of all the colors. It's the most energetic. It's not even a true color. It doesn't have its own wavelength. It's only created when the thing bends around itself. And they call it hot pink because heat is a measurement of energy, and it's energetic. It's a very energetic color. It's a magical color. There's an extreme energy that happens when you create, just like when you put magnets together, you feel that energy in the middle. So purple, I began purple and pink being a shade of purple, the center of the purples. I started noticing it, and I began to understand that symbolically, if purple is an illusion, if purple is this representation of a highly energetic property that only occurs when you bend the light, when you bend the truth, that maybe if I'm seeing purple and pink in all these stories, maybe that means the story in themselves is a bending of the light, a fabrication and I really began to see purple everywhere, purple and pink. I began to see these colors really embedded into all of these scary stories, especially with COVID. All of CNN's reporting, if you turn on CNN and they're talking about COVID, the whole screen's purple. There's something very interesting about the color purple being representative of what I believe to be hyped, over-reported, and downright fabricated events.
So are you suggesting that they're using the purple to
Like a truth
just
in plain sight.
so they're just conveying it to us?
I think so. I think they're using the words to tell us a lie, and they're using the color to tell us an overarching truth. That because purple essentially is the color of it's magic. It's the color of magic. It's a color of illusion of an energetic field created by polarity, by highly energetic states, polar opposite states. Red and blue of politics. You know, I think they were given these polar opposite choices of Democrat and Republican, or red state, blue state. When the true color that's created is this like purple magic, the
Purple
true color
represents the
royals, which I
who
believe to be an illusion, essentially, a very energetic. So yeah, there's something about purple. There, from a scientific standpoint, from a true like visible light spectrum standpoint, it's an energetic. It's a special color. It's a special color. There's something special about it. And I started noticing it everywhere when it came to these stories. When you see if you're watching a news story. Okay, you don't have to believe me on anything. Just start thinking about it. Just start being cognizant of it, and watch the news. And if you see a news story and it happens to be all purples and it's talking about kind of scary stuff, it might give you an opportunity to go, okay, maybe what I'm seeing is a manipulation of information. Maybe what I'm seeing is a manipulation of light. Maybe the purple, which represents illusion, which represents manipulation, maybe that's telling me that this story is a manipulation. So, I don't know. Enter at your own risk.
So, okay, so do you think that maybe going back to what my thinking was with the gematria, that the simulation is doing this? Now, maybe is it possible that it's not CNN anchors that are telling people to put on purple, but it's actually the simulation itself aligns things I'll use an example, and we talked about this earlier, how you're just doing things in life, and then, once you're in the middle of it, you're like, "Oh, well, I'm doing a ritual," and you don't even know it until it happens. So, do you think, maybe you bought a purple shirt when you were 15 years old, and then when you're 22, that comes into play, in a sense, and then, you're wearing that shirt, and maybe you're involved in some kind of, news shot, okay? And it happens to be you're not the focus, right? You're just in the background wearing a purple shirt, and there was this alleged robbery that happened. So you're watching the news and you see purple, and someone's like, "Oh, that's just some random girl. CNN doesn't know who she is. She has nothing to do with anything else." So is I'm seeing purple, and then, maybe a week later turns out that the guy who called the cops actually was doing a insurance claim, fraudulent thing, and he no one and robbed him. But you see the news story last week, and it was the girl had on purple. Now, if I know this is a very specific scenario, but if something like that occurs, using your line of thinking, and having an understanding that the simulation has been setting that up since you bought that shirt. You were destined to be in that area so that someone would then see the color purple in that news clip and be like, "Oh, it's not a real robbery."
I see it. I see it different. That might just be such a specific example, but I do see it differently. I don't think that our everyday preferences of purple have any impact on this. I don't think me wearing a purple shirt or anybody in reality, Joe Schmo wearing a purple shirt, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's absolutely these through our screen experiences, and I believe that a lot of the scenes that we see as real scenes on the news don't really involve real people. And so it's not
Right.
like someone can accidentally be caught in the matrix in the shirt that they bought a million years ago and they're a legit person that just happened to wear it that day and they're in the background and then someone has suspicion. I think that everything in the scene is, if it's if it's in the scene and it's purple, it's very purposefully there. And I don't think it's an accident. And I don't think that we engage in these. If I see a person wearing purple across the street, I think nothing of it. Purple's a beautiful color. It's an attractive color. Purple, pink. It's very eye catching. It's energetic. It's highly energetic, and we're drawn to it. But there's something that happens when we're presented purples through our screens in a way. I think a lot of that what we see through our screens can't include real people because a lot of it's fabricated. A lot of it's digitally generated in a way that there are not real people in the background that just happen into the scene, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, I,
I
I
am pretty I am pretty extreme. I am pretty extreme in my understanding. But I do believe a lot of the hoax stuff is just all fabricated. It's not mixed reality. It's mostly fabricated. Yeah.
right. So, I I agree with what you're saying, but uh it becomes to a point for me that my brain can show me any pattern that I want to see. If I tell my brain what pattern to look for, then it'll find it. And
Yes.
so I
Very
tend
true.
to not
I have
look for
confirmation bias.
patterns. Yeah,
Yes.
I allow patterns to show themselves to me. So, if say there's
The
a
inauguration day, though, everyone wore
right.
purple.
Right.
No, it.
So if you're talking about, yeah, specific events that,
Mm.
that might be, you know, that automatically our conspiratorial minds are going to say, "Oh, that's probably a bullshit event anyway. Let me look." And then as soon as you turn it on, you see purples and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I get it." But say you're watching the news and it's a march for a cancer and their color shirt is purple, and there's all these
I
people.
think everything we've ever been taught about cancer is false.
Yeah, I believe that as well. But I'm just saying, for this example, if someone's watching the news and they see, a whole bunch of people in purple shirts because that's the color of, whatever they're uh, they're
I think
spreading
breast cancer
awareness
chooses
for.
hot pink for a reason.
Okay, but so if someone sees that and they're now saying, you know, how, how do I apply the logic of seeing purple on my screen as fake? What am I interpreting as fake in this scene? Are these people fake? Is the awareness that they're trying to represent fake? Is this not even a real thing? Is this walk not
Yeah.
occurring right now?
I usually find that the colors are associated with events that are designed to be highly divisive or lushy. Cancer is an extraordinarily emotional topic. Even if you're doing a march, which is positive, there's still a lot of extraordinary emotion that goes along with that. I have found that purple is associated with a lot of the COVID news stories, and COVID is such an emotionally um, uh, divisive and polarizing. And I mean, everyone's been affected by COVID, whether or not you've had COVID. I believe that the true impact of COVID-19 is much more metaphysical than physical. So,
So is it more like that when you see, when you're looking, examining a scene,
I think when it's
and
used in news stories, I really just talk
okay,
about purple through the guise of news, of historical events and
okay,
information. And I don't really talk about it on a day-to-day, everyday basis. If I see purple in my everyday life, I've I don't tweet about it. I
right.
don't make
So that's
record of
not
it or
your
note of it.
first
I just look at
go
the
to.
No, 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 no. I just really like to see what's going viral. If there's a news story that's going viral and all I see is purples and it's like it's like making you scared, like even the headline gives me like a heart palpitation and I see purple associated with it, then I look a little bit further and I go, could this entire story be a fabrication? And are they telling us that it is because they're using the color purple to basically tell us that it's an illusion?
Okay. So if have you ever found a scene where maybe you thought you would find purple and didn't, or maybe that there you weren't necessarily hoping to find purple, but you didn't find purple and maybe it surprised you?
I was looking for purple on the moon landings. I was looking, but it was not. I didn't see purple on the actual moon landings. But then I saw that the Apollo 11 flight and Apollo 13 flight books, the NASA books, were hot pink, like the cover of the books that they brought up with them that were supposed to be like the actual flight path instruction manual for being on the rocket, going
Okay.
on that mission.
So
They
do
were
you
pink.
think that the moon landing might be real then?
No, I think the moon landing,
Okay.
everything that we were presented, I think everything we've ever been shown of space is fake, is not real. I'm not saying that space is fake. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that everything we've ever been shown of outer space is unreal.
I'm suggesting space is fake.
I think it could be, but I
Oh,
but they could be faking it because something else very real exists. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
That's what I think. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
actually water out there and it's
Yeah.
heaven. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I was just interested in, because so when I first learned of the line of purples, I started trying to apply it. And the way that I learned about it wasn't, I didn't hear it from you, in a podcast. I heard it from someone who was, I guess, doing their best to relay the same type of message that you were saying, just in their own way. And the way it was presented to me, was look for purples in your life and you'll start to see things that are fake. And what I started to see was, uh, I started seeing purple scarves because it was right around Easter time. I started seeing purple scarves on the cross.
Crosses. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
yeah, that. So to me, I have these very odd meditative things that occur to me, and right before Easter, I was meditating, like looking in a mirror, and right on my third eye, right here, I saw a scene play out where I didn't even know Pontius Pilate's real name at that time. Actually said it wrong when I came out of this because I just saw this guy move the rock out of the way, and he pulled Jesus and dragged him to his house, and then I saw his wife off in the corner, like all worried, like, "What should I do? What should I do?" And he's just like, "Go get water, get rags," because they were performing a ritual to bring life back into Jesus, and he did it. And uh, so I saw that play out, and like I said, I have to believe my experience more than I could believe anyone else with anything. So when I saw that, and the person that was telling me about the purples is like, oh, if you see something purple, it means it's fake. And then I see that, I'm like, well, that's real. So at least to me, because it was my experience. So then I was like, that doesn't really resonate with me in that sense. But when you're saying that, okay, when you're re-examining it and you're using it more for as not your main source of fakery, but as another confirmation, as another check on the list. Like, okay, you got actors here, you got
Yeah.
purple here,
Kind of like with the 33s too. It's like
yeah,
it gives me, if I am suspicious and I see the colors and I see the numbers, it's, yeah, a checklist. I would say it's part of the checklist. Tools in the
okay.
toolbox. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
very
definitely.
interesting that magenta, if you reword just the E and the N, it's magnet A, and it would be a magnetic a field that you were just saying how the purple even exists for the magenta to exist. And
I
I
like to say magenta is also magic enter, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah, that's always a good one too. But and the polar opposite of magenta is green screen green,
Green
correct?
screen green, lime green, green screen green. 100%. The polar opposite of magenta is green screen green, which I think is interesting because it's like the what and the why and the how. So, if magenta represents a pure illusion, how do you achieve that? Well, green screen technology tells you, that that's how we achieve illusion is by using the green screen. So it's like they kind of represent the same thing, but
Yes.
yet they're opposites. They're mirrors. They're mirrors of each other. Yeah.
And it's very interesting that the heart center is green and that new grass, well, just grass and period, by itself. But when you are growing new grass, it's very bright green at first.
It's that very specific shade of hyper green. Hyper green.
New
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And so that resonates with me big time is, because everything does have an equal opposite. So,
Yes.
so if that, if, and the heart center is our heart chakra is green. So if that's our center, then the opposite, the outside would be the purple. And then you come across ancient civilizations and the purple skies, and that's
And even the red wine sea, like the seas of Odysseus, and also sometimes in the
yeah,
Bible, the biblical red seas, those are actually like a purpley, a purple
like
color.
yeah,
Yeah.
like red wine
Yeah. It's
could
actually
be
like yeah,
interpreted as
it's
purple.
purple.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So that's all very interesting. And the color of galaxy is that blue, purple, black mixture, and it's
Pink. As we saw in
yeah,
the Milky Way, the center,
yeah,
pink.
right.
Yeah.
And
Purples.
where does all that come from? Uh, Other than the exact opposite of our center, it would be our complete external, which is the galaxy.
Our
So
green, our center green, our heart green.
right,
Yeah, that's so interesting. And when you do look at pictures of space, you'd be for a color that doesn't exist on the visible light spectrum, purples and pinks, it doesn't exist. You have to have the wrapping of it for, it's not red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. It's totally new. So for a color that doesn't exist on the visible light spectrum, it's extraordinary how much purple there is in space. Yeah.
hmm, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Um, so let's see, is there? Oh, and I also wanted to touch on podcasting because I'm here. This is a new podcast. This is probably like my 16th or 17th episode, or will be. And I know that you have, I think, 8 out now with Realize Radio, and I just saw a tweet that said you're starting a dating in the Matrix
Mating in the Matrix
Mating in the Matrix.
with my Maria. She's my twin flame. I like to say she's the salt to my pepper. She's the chocolate to my vanilla. Um, we're good gal pals, and we love to talk about big things like simulation theory is one of our favorite things to kick around. That's like our casual conversation is the simulation theory. So we're actually going to take that type of approach to the idea of relationships and love and the entire notion of modern love could be one big psyop, you know. So we're kind of gonna approach it from an everything is fake standpoint, but also how to get to something very real, how to live in your truth, how to be what's truthful to you. Because I truly believe that we're super individuals, and what is good for what is good and right for me and my journey and myself may be a complete opposite representation of what is good and right for somebody else. And so it's going to be really more about that and more about getting in tune with being real yourself in this simulated world. And in doing so, you know, connecting with yourself. And in order to really connect with others, you have to connect with yourself first. So we're going to have conversations. That's going to be a Patreon show. That's called Mating with an M, Mating in the Matrix, and that's going to be on Patreon. We're actually recording our first episode on Monday, so coming up. But we did a preview episode on My Maria's podcast. So if you look at her up, My Maria 777, she's got a podcast out there on Apple on all major platforms. You can see one of her most recent episodes with Human Vibration, and it's kind of like a little teaser of what we're going to be doing on Patreon. And then Realize Radio is amazing. I've been doing 8 episodes. We called it season 1. That's with myself, Rambo, and Human Vibration, Rambo, and Murph. Murph is we're all on Twitter, and it's at Ninja Sniper Pawn, which is a weird Ninja Sniper Pawn 1. I'm not even sure how to. It's weird. That's Murph. Rambo is at Seek Truth 101 or Seek the Truth 101. I'm at Human Vibration, and we really just kick around what's real, what's not real. Rambo is really into the properties behind the special effects, the visual effects, and even the old Hollywood magic with the theatrics of wigs and silicone masks, as you were describing. He likes to go into all of that, how Hollywood helps pull off a lot of these theatrical elements of our reality. And Murph is really amazing at looking at history and looking at energy and looking at everything that we've been taught and told about how the world works around us. He kind of breaks it all apart. He just has these really great brainstorms and breaks all these and makes connections. And then I kind of do both. I like to hit what's real and what's not real from all of the angles. I like to do pattern recognition. I see the purples, and I see templates is something that I focus on when people look very similar. Archetypal physicalities, celebrities that look very similar, celebrities that look like historical figures. I like to point those out. I think there's something very big happening there. Anyway, so yeah, share those thoughts. I do a lot of guesting on podcasts. That's one of my favorite things to do is being a guest.
Yeah, well, it's so wonderful that that we have this option of podcasting, uh, because I feel like what happened in 2020 was we were all crazy people, and we were trying to wake people up in the most nonsensical way because we all felt this amazing shift and we thought it was an immediate thing. And now that we got to 2021 and we're about halfway through, everyone's starting to realize like, oh, it wasn't, all at once. It's going to be big shifts constantly until we get to where we're going and we have time and we can be more sensical about things. And we're not shouting at each other in echo chambers any longer on just Twitter or Facebook or whatever app someone may be on. On those platforms, you're only reaching the same people over and over typically. And with podcasts, I feel like uh, not only is it more, is it easier to ingest because you're listening to someone speak and you're hearing a train of thought and you're not just seeing words on a screen,
I
but
think so.
yeah, and you're
Vibration.
making
Yeah,
these
human
connections with
vibration.
people that uh,
Yeah. I think so.
resonates to the listener, and they can feel the vibrations through the conversation, and you can feel the realness of it, which, what we've been talking about a lot is the fakeness of what's coming through our screens, and there's no feeling at all through text or, any of the stuff you're going to see on social media. There's no real feeling towards it. But when you're hearing things and people are discussing things, you can feel it because there are sounds that are vibrating into your being. That's what screens don't allow for. So I think the podcasting thing is really the next real big movement on how everything's going to become interconnected. I think the spoken word is about to become a lot more important than the written word.
I think so too. I like both. I like to write. I love writing actually, but I do like speaking. I feel like I can enter into a flow state when you're speaking a truth or something that you're very passionate about. I think that you can enter into that. I think the discussion, and you're right. There's something very magical that happens when you're sharing through your vibration, through your every word is a vibration, every mouth sound. It's not so much the words in like the big picture scheme. It's also the mouth sounds that we make. Everything, the sound of our voice is very important, and I don't know. I've started to understand that more. Um, you mentioned how important it is to live in your truth, and if you are deceptive with your words, and if you are even telling little white lies here and there just to protect what you think is whatever decorum or to hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. I think that there's actually a degradation that happens. There's actually a destruction that happens when we deceive ourselves and others in the guise of doing right. I don't know. There's like there's something negative that happens, and when you live in your truth, when you speak truth, I think that is communicated through the vibrations of your voice, and it's actually registered. I think it's registered by the ear, by the receiving end, by the machinery that we are equipped with to take in these types of vibrations, and to like your ear perks up, you get attuned, you get into the flow state too if you're listening to a good book, like an audio book or something, or like a good conversation, or just your favorite music, or um, you can get into it and get lost in it and lose all sense of time. Yeah. I think it's very cool. I think it's very cool what we can do through our spoken word. And you are absolutely correct that there is something that is additional and special between speaking and the words on a page, words on a screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming more present as time's going on. And I know right now it seems uh, like like everybody is becoming more attached to the machine, but to me in my world, it's people are breaking free. I'm seeing that the matrix illusion of our reality is being broken down slowly. That we've been building or that we are building the foundations every day that people like you and I speak, or Murph and Rambo. When these people with these dangerous, quote unquote, dangerous ideas start to talk to each other. And what happens is we start to trigger things in each other, and it's like a memory overload right now. Is we're overloading the simulation because we're triggering things in each other. You're blowing my mind with some things, and then one of our listeners is going to hear that, and they're going to be just completely shattered. When it happened to you, what was it from? Usually someone telling you some mind-blowing information. It's not usually that you read something that comes later, but it's
Yeah, we
someone
always learned that
telling you.
Santa wasn't real by some kid at school telling
Yeah.
us, that sharing of verbal, even the folklore of storytelling. We're always told that it's so important that the ways that our great knowledge is passed down is through these stories, through the ancestral stories. So, spoken word, yeah.
Yeah, I think writing is very limiting. It takes me too long. I have too much to say. My brain moves too fast for my hands. Now, if I could, just if my brain could produce something somehow while I think it, in a written format, like that would be cool. Like that I'd write something that way, but anymore it's just too much to type. I get lost in my words too, and then like I'll get off on tangents and out. I realized I was on this string of a thought that I then typed out. And now that it's typed out, you can see it and you're not feeling my words and you're not listening to my story through the whole thing. You're reading in your own voice like this word is this and you're slowly it's not a flow state type thing. So I feel it's very disconnecting when you're trying to connect with somebody and they're perceiving it in their own manner and they don't even realize that they're changing your definitions to fit what they think the definition of the word you're using means.
That's an excellent point, and I think that our language is designed more for misinterpretation of miscommunication, essentially, than true sharing of understanding of understanding each other and communication of ideas and the actual pure flow of knowledge. I think that we have scrambled tongues for a reason. We share different language and dialects for a different reason. We're broken up quite significantly in that way. I mean, I can travel to another country and I can look at signs on the street I'm an intelligent person, but I have no idea what that says. Doesn't mean I'm not smart. Just means I don't have the tools to read it. Just means I don't have the. But I think there's a reason that the entire world is broken up by that. And also, even once you do speak the same language, even when you are fluent in the verbal dialogue, there's so much emotional trickery. There's so much built in. There's so much baked in especially into English, where you're saying what you're not meaning and you're meaning what you're not saying, and that's kind of
That,
by design. Yeah.
yeah, I actually talked about this last night on my podcast was, you have all these different languages, and then in those languages, you have slangs and different dialects. And then you can even have the same word means one thing in America, but in England, it means something very different. But it's the same word. It's all sorcery, to me, it's all a trick. And then even you go to a smaller subsect, so say, someone in Texas is going to have uh, someone in Texas is going to have a very different uh, slang for something than someone in New York. So even within Texas, you have two people who are very much alike. One of them has a subjective definition of what they think this word means, and you have another definition. So if you're not aware of the other person's definition, and you're just assuming that you guys both have the same definition, that's where the miscommunication comes in. Yeah, and I think that's purposely done.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I think that our perceived sometimes we perceive that people, the reason we're able to kind of move so swiftly through this world and be misunderstood is because we actually don't realize when people aren't understanding us. We kind of think that people are getting us and we are having a very fruitful conversation, but a lot of the conversations that we do have are kind of like nonsensical and nothing's really, when I think about corporate America and I think about kind of meetings about meetings, and there's so many words said, but there's not really anything meaningful communicated, but yet everybody leaves feeling very purposeful and that they're all on the same page, and it's like, what's really been done and accomplished? I just think it's so interesting. I love that you brought up the language. You brought it up earlier. You actually brought it up a couple times when we're talking about maybe ourselves being these advanced computing systems, and what is a computer based on? But an a language, an operating system. Windows versus Mac, Linux. It's a language. It's a base operating system. We as computers are programmed with our base operating system could be telepathy, but we're overwritten by a language. We're overwritten by, we learn a language, but is that really the best thing? Is all these spoken words really our truest communication tool? Maybe not. Maybe we are meant to be telepathic and not use verbal language. I don't know. There could be something beyond and much better. But you are right. You hit the nail on the head many times that our language is fall short. Our communication, the language
The
tool that we're
barrier.
given falls short of actual truth communication. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the first key to indoctrination is you learn to speak English. When we're babies, we're communicating with all of nature all around us, and we're like, we start crying because we're like, look at these stupid people. Like, why won't they listen to me? Like, I'm hungry. Don't you see? I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Feed
Why aren't
me.
they in
Yeah,
tune with me? Why are they out of
yeah.
tune? Yeah.
And then eventually you learn to communicate with them, but then you forget how to communicate with everything else.
With your source, with yourself, with yourself. Yeah. That gut intuition.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Well, we've been on here for about 2 hours now. I do want to ask one more question,
Of course.
because life is so hard, and in the sense that day to day people are so caught up in themselves and all the mundane uh, bullshit that we have to go through in our lives. Yeah, and then like 2020 happens and we become conspiratorial type thinkers, and then 2021 happens and maybe we're a little bit further away from the conspiracies, but we definitely don't want to be blue pilled again. But then we get to this place where it's like we have to find a grounding place. So what do you do as a leisure activity, something to ground yourself? What's your favorite, you know, activity to do to really be human?
That's a great question. I do love to connect with nature. I love to take walks. And when I do that, as much as I do like to consume media, I like to listen to podcasts and audiobooks and lead listening to things. I more and more I have just left all that at home and just listened to the world around me and be really in tune in the moment. I don't meditate, but I do try often throughout my day, many times throughout my day, to check in and and check in with my intention, check in with my motivations, check in with my actual energies at the moment. Like if I'm feeling frustrated, uh, if I don't get that in check, I'm going to I'm that my internal frenzy and anxiety is going to rub off in some way. Even if I'm just going into Target, some I'm gonna have some sort of my energy is going to my frenetic energy inside me, or in line at Starbucks, someone's gonna cut in front of me, and I'm gonna think it's like a personal assault in some way. Um, I have noticed that the energy that you bring into every situation colors your world. It colors your entire experience from the moment you wake up. Just like they say, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, the rest of your day is going to be kind of crappy, because unless you check in, unless you redirect, and almost like an alchemy, almost if you redirect and retransmute that negative energy, you're going to have a pretty bad day from the start, and it's going to continue along that path unless you change the train tracks of your trajectory. I think the things to make myself feel more whole and human is to really check in, to stop being on autopilot, to stop being so frenzied and just being like, rush, 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 here, there, here, there, everywhere, race, 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 go, go, go. To check in with myself in the moment and to not fill my background space with everything, not fill my, like, turn off the radio if I'm driving and just drive. Just do the thing that you're doing. You don't have to do all the other things at the same time too. It's not, I have found that doing that and letting myself have more space in space and to be more connected to my very moment in that time, I've been able to kind of slow down my time. I've been able to slow down my experience. Time doesn't just like roll so fast for me anymore. I've actually been able to slow down my experience with time by being more present, being more in the moment. I'm kind of figuring out how to slow time. Kind of cool.
That's amazing. So when you say you check in with yourself, is it like you're feeling how you feel, and then if you're
Mm-hmm.
picking up on negative energy, you're like, oh, that's not really me.
Mm-hmm.
That's I gotta let go of that.
Yep, yep, yep. Exactly. You know, I deal in the corporate world still. I still have kind of one foot in the corporate world and one foot in this new world. And you deal with so much weird verbal dancing when you're communicating with clients and stuff, and or with anybody on your team. And back in the day, I used to very easily fire off like a missive, like some sort of like I wanted everyone to know that I was unhappy. I no longer do that. I no longer send negative communication out into the ether ever. Even if I'm frustrated, even if someone else has made a mistake, even if I have just found it is no longer it's no longer productive. It's no longer beneficial to me or anybody to be negative, to to traffic in negativity. And so now I make sure, even if I have to talk about someone making a mistake and I have to point this out, I do it in an extraordinarily constructive, uplifting way, and usually fall on my own sword many times, and talk about how I could probably have done something different to facilitate this and never happen. You know, this happened. Let's learning point. Here's what we're gonna do moving forward. When before, I think that I was always caught up in the thing of like making excuses, like never being to blame for anything.
Hmm.
When now I've realized it doesn't matter. Blame doesn't matter. Blame is just an existential crisis that is experienced singularly. You know, I think that by just always being solution based and never blame based and never like problematic based, always just being solution, positive, positive, positive. My whole identity in the corporate world has changed too. Like all my interactions have been much more uplifted. I don't know. It's our energy. My name's Human Vibration. My handle is Human Vibration. It's with a vibe. We're all vibing. Our energies are a vibe. You can be in tune or out of tune with the surroundings, and you know what it's like to be out of tune. Nothing
Hmm.
is working, nothing is jiving. You know what it's like to be in tune. Smooth sailing, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's when you're honest with yourself, when you're true to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And when we're not true to ourselves, we allow it to the fakeness in us to develop its own thing and be in the background and take over. I think
Take over.
that's
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to end this is, you want to just stay positive.
Hmm.
So, do you want to tell? I know we talked about, and I'll put in the links again, but for anyone that might just be driving right now, or not driving, might be,
Yeah.
you know, be able to type in your name real quick. Why don't you tell them where you can find you, where they can find
Yes,
you?
absolutely. Thank you. Well, first, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about all this stuff. We talked about some things that I've been on a lot of podcasts, but we hit on some things that I've never spoken about before. Just different ways to approach. I love that. I love connecting in a true way, on a different way with. That's why I like being a guest
Well,
because it's
thank you so much for that.
yeah, I get to really it's a dance, and I get to
Hmm.
be introduced to an audience that I would have never been able to reach on my own. My reach at the moment is through my Twitter handle at Human Vibration. Also on Instagram at Human Vibration underscore Insta, and then I've been on many podcasts. You can actually just look up. You can actually just search Human Vibration in like the search thing, and it'll show a lot of the shows that I've been on as guest. That's kind of an easy way to do it. Also, I am a host on a show called Real Eyes Radio. That's on all major platforms at Real Eyes Radio, and that's with me and two other guys, Rambo and Murph, and we have a great time. We just talk about it's similar to what we talk. You know, we just kind of riff on things that matter, and things that don't, and where that we draw the line for ourselves and what that means. And I'm also starting a new podcast with one of my great girlfriends. Her name is My Maria 777, and it's going to be called Mating, or it is called Mating in the Matrix, and that's going to be on Patreon. And while season one of Realize Radio is on hiatus, we are doing a Patreon for Realize Radio. That's at Realize Radio on Patreon. And we're doing some more intimate chats, more kind of like casual. It's not going to be the 2 hour episodic situation that we have on Realize Radio for each episode being like a big show. It's going to be more small bites, more interactive media. And we're doing that on kind of a behind the wall, just because we're being a little bit more personal, talking about some more casual stuff than what we put out there on. Not that we're really censoring ourselves on the free one. It's just we just don't really talk about ourselves as much, and so it's kind of something we're exploring. So that's Realize Radio, Patreon for now, while we're on break for between season 1 and season 2. That's it, I think.
Well, I mean, hey, you guys, everybody should go out there, and if you're on any of these platforms, you should definitely be looking into Human Vibration. She's, as you've heard, she's incredibly brilliant. And if you just take the base understanding that when you speak the truth fully, you say some things that most people will get offended by. Uh, and it when you get to the point that I am and that human vibrations at with yourself, being true to yourself is more important than offending somebody. And I don't mean to say that you should go out and be offensive to somebody, that you should go purposely try to hurt somebody. That's not what I'm suggesting. But when you're true to yourself, it doesn't matter what you're saying or how off the wall it may seem. If it's not resonating with us, then we wouldn't be saying it. So it's only coming out of our mouths because we believe it's true through everything we've searched in studying our consciousness.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. This is my exploration of my truth, and I'm sharing it publicly, and people resonate with it. And I love sharing it, and I think that's a cool thing that I can kind of be like I can just shine my light bright.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to be very transparent. You know, I talk the first couple of episodes. I get very deep into my traumas, so
Yeah.
I like to be very transparent uh, and show everybody. You know, I used to be that way, and now, you know, I think everything, you know, to a point, is fake. Everything here is an illusion. So, you know,
Talking to the
there's
right girl.
yeah, exactly. Well, I'm so glad that you came on. You know, really, it's an honor to have you on and to meet you and speak with you. And I'm so glad that you said that my interview was different than the rest, because that's
Wonderful. You
what my
asked
show.
excellent questions. Excellent
Yeah,
questions. Excellent
that.
flow. Great. Great.
Well, thank
And I know
you,
that you
thank you
said you
so
were
much.
newer, but you've already got 16. You said 16 shows, yeah?
Well,
Or
seven. Yeah,
17?
so I have 10 by myself already recorded. I have three
Uh-huh.
more to do, and now you're my fourth interview.
Wow.
So
Oh, well, you've got quite a bit.
that's
So
less
you're
than a
well on
month
your way.
too.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
And I truly believe that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Hmm.
And so if you have a small audience at the moment, hopefully, I will share. I'll share the episode, and hopefully some of my followers come on over and show you some love. I
Yeah,
hope
that would
that
be
that
awesome.
happens. Yeah. And this community is pretty cool. This mindset is pretty cool. This way of living and way of interacting in the world with yourself, most importantly. Being kind to yourself and being true to yourself is the most important relationship, really, of
Oh,
all.
absolutely.
But then that translates to others. Every other relationship that's in your life will benefit. And people will be introduced into your life. When you vibrate in a higher frequency, you're going to meet cooler people. You're going to meet better people that you were meant to meet that you probably wouldn't have met. You wouldn't have met. You weren't meant to meet when you were vibrating lower. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a wonderful interview, and I can't wait to listen back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, if you want to reach out to the show, you know, my email is thegreatchakraawakening777@gmail.com. You can go to the website, thegreatchakraawakening777.podbean.com. Right now, Twitter suspended my account. So, you know, I'm trying to get it back, even though I've had it for 3 days and they just took it from me for for no reason. But yeah, so you can just follow me. I guess join the Facebook page is the social media that I'm definitely at right now. So for everybody, you know, I'm so glad that you got to listen to this conversation, and everybody have a great day.